On the evening of Sunday, December 17th, a woman burst into a small video rental store in Fayetteville, barefoot and visibly shaken. Her hands and face were streaked with red, and her breath came in frantic gasps. Her name was Michelle Theer. In a state of distress, she pleaded with the store staff to call for emergency help. Her husband, she said, had been shot. Without a cell phone on her, the rental store was her only option. Within minutes, emergency responders were dispatched, and Fayetteville police rushed to the location Michelle described. The scene they encountered was chilling. In the parking lot stood a lone red Ford Explorer. Beside it lay a man gravely wounded, 31-year-old Marty Theer. A soldier recently assigned to a nearby military base, Marty and Michelle had only recently settled in Fayetteville to begin this new chapter of their lives. That day, they had attended a Christmas party together. Afterwards, Michelle needed to stop by her office to collect some items, so Marty waited in the car. What happened next unfolded in mere seconds. Michelle recounted hearing the sharp crack of 5 gunshots. She rushed outside to find her husband collapsed beside their vehicle. With no time to think, she sprinted for help. Paramedics worked urgently, but Marty's injuries were devastating. Despite their best efforts, he died shortly after arriving at the hospital. From the outset, investigators were puzzled. There was no clear motive. Nothing had been stolen from the car. No signs of robbery. No witnesses who had seen a gunman, and no unusual activity reported in the parking lot. Michelle's hands were tested for gunpowder residue, a standard procedure to rule out suspicion, but the results were negative. Detectives were left with a haunting question. What had happened to Marty, and why? Captain Frank Martin led the investigation. Marty Theer was born on February 26, 1969, in Würzburg, Germany. Though born on European soil, Marty was not German. His father was stationed there with the U.S. military, and his mother Linda worked as a nurse. Marty was their only child and deeply cherished, especially by his mother, who saw him as the center of her life. But family life was complicated. Marty's father, also named Martin, struggled with inner demons few understood. At times harsh and quick to anger, at others withdrawn and silent, the tension between his parents grew heavier with time. When Marty was still young, his father walked out and never returned. Linda was left alone, raising Marty in a foreign country, carrying the grief of abandonment while trying to provide stability. Later, she learned her husband had suffered from schizophrenia, a fact that explained much but brought little comfort. Seeking support, Linda returned to the United States with Marty, moving in with her parents in Colorado. She worked hard to provide for her son, while her parents stepped in to help. Marty's grandfather, a veteran who had fought on the IE front lines in the 1940s, became a steady and loving presence. He filled the role of a father figure, teaching Marty lessons about resilience, discipline, and kindness. Their bond was strong and shaped Marty's worldview. At school, Marty thrived academically, excelled in sports, and earned the respect of his peers. Friends were plentiful, but no relationship meant more to him than the one he shared with his mother. She was his anchor and closest confidant. During his teenage years in Colorado, Marty met Michelle, the girl who would change his life. Michelle was born on December 9, 1970. Like Marty, her family life was unsettled. Her father, Tom, was also in the military, which meant frequent relocations. For 3 years, the family lived in the United Kingdom, and later he was sent to South Korea. Michelle, the oldest of 3 children, carried much of the household responsibility. She adored her father and struggled with the pain of his absence after he divorced her mother. Michelle cared for her younger sister Angela and brother Tom while their mother worked. Despite her heavy responsibilities, Michelle did well in school, preferring a small circle of friends over the spotlight. When Michelle and Marty met, their bond was immediate. Marty, who had grown up without siblings, enjoyed spending time with Michelle's brother and sister, quickly becoming part of her family. By the late 1980s, Marty had graduated high school and secured a place at the U.S. Air Force Academy. Though he dreamed of space travel, the reality was harsh. Becoming an astronaut required rare opportunities and fierce competition. Marty chose instead to dedicate himself to the military, a path that still aligned with his passions. Michelle joined the military reserves after high school while enrolling at university. She helped pay for her studies through her reserve service and even completed a 5-month deployment, earning a Medal of Merit for her dedication. Still, the military was not her long-term ambition. During her service, she discovered her true interest lay in psychology. Despite demanding schedules, their relationship endured. Eventually, Marty proposed, and in 1991, the couple married. Michelle at 21, Marty at 22. Marty's first assignment was in Oklahoma. Michelle balanced studying psychology and working part-time in a nursery. Soon, he was transferred to Denver for training, and Michelle followed, continuing her studies in Colorado. Her persistence paid off. In 1994, Michelle graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology, becoming the first in her family to earn a university degree. For Marty and Michelle, the future seemed bright. Two ambitious young people building a life together, anchored by love and resilience. Determined to go further, Michelle enrolled in a master's program immediately after finishing her degree. By the mid-1990s, life took them to Florida, where new opportunities awaited. Michelle quickly completed her master's degree and pursued a PhD. She poured herself into research and began contributing articles to academic publications. Her vision was clear: to build a career in academia and ultimately become a therapist. While she chased this path, Marty pressed forward in his military career. Each climbed their respective ladders of success. In Florida, Michelle found meaningful work. She volunteered on a crisis line, supporting victims of abuse. Later, she moved into therapeutic work, holding sessions with inmates in correctional facilities. Invited as a guest expert, she appeared on local radio and spoke at public events, building a reputation as a compassionate, thoughtful professional. At home, life seemed steady. Michelle and Marty purchased a modest house with a swimming pool, a symbol of the comfortable life they were creating. But behind that image, cracks were forming. The rhythm of military life was demanding, and both careers required long hours. In 1996, Marty was deployed to Kuwait for several months. It was the first time Michelle experienced such a long separation, leaving her anxious and unsettled. By the end of the decade, more challenges tested their bond. Marty's orders sent him to Georgia, while Michelle secured a coveted internship in Alabama. For several months, they lived apart, each focused on building their future. The year 1999 proved especially tough. Separate households brought a sense of independence Michelle began to value. Without the constant pressure of shared responsibilities, she discovered she enjoyed the freedom of making her own choices, managing her own schedule, and escaping the daily routines of married life. Eventually, Marty was reassigned to North Carolina. Michelle, having finished her internship, agreed to join him. They moved to Fayetteville, a city defined by its military connections and steady flow of new arrivals. Here, Michelle began working as a licensed psychologist in private practice. She adapted quickly and found stability in her career. Marty, proud of her achievements, stood by her side. But their marriage was no longer the same. Years of separation had changed their dynamic. Now living under the same roof, small differences felt larger. Marty's meticulous nature clashed with Michelle's independence. Arguments over trivial things like cleanliness became frequent. Beneath these surface disagreements lay deeper issues. At 30, Marty longed to start a family. He wanted children, believing it was the right time. Michelle disagreed. She was just establishing herself professionally, and the thought of raising children while moving from base to base filled her with dread. By mid-2000, Michelle suggested marriage counseling. Marty refused. With no compromise in sight, she decided to move out temporarily. Michelle rented an apartment for 3 months while Marty stayed in their house. She wasn't certain she wanted a divorce, but believed distance might help her sort through her feelings. Before long, however, it became clear Michelle was not living alone. She had begun an affair. John Diamond was 28, an Army staff sergeant based at Fort Bragg, a short drive from the Theers' home. Their paths crossed about a year earlier, not by chance, but through the internet. Michelle had posted an ad seeking a physically fit, attractive partner aged 25 to 35, someone she could meet 2 or 3 times a week. But looks weren't enough. She wanted a man who could challenge her intellectually and be local to Fayetteville. John fit the description perfectly. Like Michelle, he came from a military background. Tall, athletic, and confident, he was a career soldier. He was also married to a woman he met while stationed in Panama who had followed him to the U.S. But John's loyalty was questionable. He had a reputation for infidelity. Michelle and John grew close quickly. They shared physical attraction and an interest in swinging and alternative lifestyles. Yet Michelle hadn't completely turned her back on Marty. After several months apart, Marty reached out. He admitted mistakes and agreed to attend marriage counseling, something he had refused before. For Michelle, this was a sign their relationship might be saved. She returned home, ready to give their marriage another chance. In therapy, they confronted issues pulling them apart. Marty's obsession with order, Michelle's frustration with constant relocations, her desire for a more social lifestyle versus his preference for quiet home life. And the question of children, something Marty wanted, but Michelle was not ready for. Their sessions were intense, but one topic never came up: Michelle's affair with John. Marty seemed unaware. Instead, Michelle raised the subject of betrayal. Years earlier, Marty had posted an online ad himself. Nothing came of it, but he expressed deep regret. Michelle treated this as disloyalty, and it weighed heavily on their marriage. Meanwhile, John had difficulty letting go of Michelle. The end of their relationship was painful, but eventually, he appeared to accept it. On December 17, 2000, everything came to a head. That evening, Marty and Michelle attended a Christmas party hosted by Michelle's employer. Friends and colleagues remembered seeing them together, holding hands, smiling, appearing close like any loving couple. No one suspected that within hours, tragedy would strike. After the party, they headed home. But before returning for the night, Michelle asked Marty to make a quick stop at her office to collect some books. Marty waited in their red Ford Explorer while she went inside. Moments later, gunfire shattered the night. At around 10:30 p.m., Marty was shot 5 times in the parking lot, one bullet striking his head in what appeared to be a deliberate attempt to ensure he wouldn't survive. When investigators arrived, the crime scene was strange. Nothing had been stolen. Marty's wallet, watch, everything remained untouched. It didn't look like a robbery. It looked personal. Suspicion quickly turned toward the victim's spouse. Detectives learned Marty had recently taken out a life insurance policy worth $500,000. Michelle's behavior that night raised questions. Rather than using the phone in her office to call for help, she ran barefoot across the street to a nearby video rental store. To police, this seemed odd. Did she waste precious time while her husband lay dying? Michelle explained that when she heard the gunshots, she ran outside in panic. In her rush, she locked herself out of her office, leaving her without access to a phone. With no other choice, she ran to the video hut and begged staff to call 911. But investigators weren't convinced. Michelle admitted to her affair with John, described the crisis in her marriage, and revealed details about her strained relationship with Marty. She confessed that although she had supposedly ended things with John, she still maintained contact as a friend. This honesty caught investigators' attention, but also raised a new possibility. Did John want Marty out of the way to have Michelle for himself? John was quickly brought in for questioning. he denied involvement. On the night of the murder, he said he was at home with his wife watching movies. His wife and her mother supported his story. For a moment, his alibi seemed secure. But the next day, December 18th, John filed for divorce, a coincidence investigators found too curious to ignore. Suspicious, detectives re-interviewed his wife. Shaken by the divorce and aware of her husband's infidelities, she told the full story. Around 9 p.m., while supposedly watching a film, John received a phone call. He immediately stood up, changed clothes, and announced he was going to the barracks. Phone records later confirmed the call came from Michelle's number. Michelle denied making the call. The case was building, but still relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. In 2001, both Michelle and John were asked to take polygraph tests. They refused. To detectives, the refusal looked suspicious, though both claimed their lawyers advised against it. As questioning deepened, new revelations surfaced. Investigators discovered Michelle's affair with John was not her first. During Marty's deployments and training, especially when she lived in Alabama, Michelle sought excitement through multiple affairs and frequented clubs where partners were exchanged. Marty, longing for a stable family life, appeared unaware. Moreover, Michelle had not truly ended her involvement with John after returning to Marty. She told investigators she had, but emails painted a different picture. Initially, she tried to cut ties, but John begged her not to leave. Their relationship continued. Surveillance outside Michelle's home confirmed their ongoing affair. At the start of 2001, Michelle and John even vacationed together in Florida, showing little sign of grief or mourning. To detectives, the picture was clear. Michelle may not have pulled the trigger, but she could have manipulated her lover to do it. Their suspicions were reinforced when John's acquaintances revealed he had borrowed a pistol from a man named John Donald. The weapon was the same type used in Marty's murder. When police asked John to return the gun, he claimed it had been stolen during a car break-in. But surveillance footage suggested otherwise. His car had been seen outside Michelle's residence on the night of the alleged theft, making the break-in story appear staged. Amid mounting pressure, Michelle returned to the police station with a strange explanation. She admitted she had continued seeing John after Marty's death, but insisted it was only because she was conducting her own investigation. She claimed her psychology background gave her tools to extract information, and she wanted to determine whether John had killed her husband. To detectives, it was another curious twist in an increasingly tangled story. In February 2001, military police arrested John Diamond. He was formally charged with murder and conspiracy to commit murder. His trial began in August. The prosecution's case leaned heavily on circumstantial evidence, but the pieces fit together in ways hard to ignore. Investigators established John had borrowed the pistol used to kill Marty. Phone records showed repeated communication between him and Michelle in the days and hours before the murder, suggesting planning and coordination. Witnesses described his abrupt behavior the night of the killing. Ballistics proved the bullets recovered from Marty's body were fired from the weapon John had borrowed. Still, the case had gaps. No one saw John at the scene. No fingerprints, DNA, or eyewitness testimony tied him directly to the act. When called to testify, Michelle invoked her Fifth Amendment rights and refused to answer questions, fueling suspicions but leaving prosecutors with fewer direct statements. John denied pulling the trigger, claiming he was drawn into Michelle's schemes. The military court was not persuaded. John Diamond was found guilty and sentenced to life without parole. He was stripped of rank, honors, and benefits. The defense challenged the verdict, alleging a conflict of interest, claiming Michelle had paid the initial retainer for his civilian attorneys, a fact undisclosed at trial. Despite efforts, the conviction stood. No plea deal was offered, and John began his life sentence. With John behind bars, attention turned to Michelle. In August 2001, she was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy. Instead of facing trial, she vanished. She withdrew $30,000 from savings, underwent plastic surgery to alter her appearance, adopted a false identity, and fled to Florida. For over a year, she stayed hidden, keeping a low profile and avoiding familiar places and people. Her run ended in August 2002 when authorities tracked her down. By then, investigators had compiled a vast trove of evidence. Over 88,000 emails and instant messages from Michelle's computer revealed not only her romantic involvement with John, but also their discussions about Marty's death. Among the discoveries were internet searches for body bags and detailed notes on assuming a new identity, obtaining false documents, and evading capture. When Michelle's trial began in 2004, she again refused to testify, citing her Fifth Amendment rights. But the digital evidence spoke volumes. Jurors saw explicit communications with John, records of her planning, and the careful steps she took to disappear after charges were filed. It was enough to secure a conviction. In December 2004, Michelle was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. She was sentenced to life without parole. She remains incarcerated at Anson Correctional Institution for Women in Polton, North Carolina. Even in prison, Michelle's behavior raised alarms. In 2010, she was disciplined after guards intercepted a hand-drawn map of the facility she had attempted to mail out, possibly signaling an escape attempt. She spent 45 days in disciplinary segregation as punishment. Captain Marty's story stands as a reminder of life's fragility. To those who knew him, family, friends, and colleagues, he is remembered not for the tragedy of his death, but for the dedication, loyalty, and love he showed throughout his life. His memory continues to be honored, even as the case that ended his life remains one of Fayetteville's most haunting examples of love gone fatally wrong. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.